Thank you for accepting our invitation to the webinar today, Accelerating Material Discovery with VSParticle Technology. My name is Andrei Linka, content creator for VSParticle. Today I will co-host this live session together with Eike van Vugt, CEO of VSParticle, who's going to talk about VSParticle technology and how it can help researchers speed up much needed material development in the fields of catalysis, healthcare, and semiconductors. But before we dive into the presentation, I would like to give you an overview of today's agenda. First of all, we are going to discuss this webinar interface and how we're going to handle questions during the presentation, webinar recording, and then a few updates for the upcoming webinars. We would be delighted to have you there also. We will then discuss how to collect feedback and the ways for you to get in touch with us. I will give you a short VSParticle introduction before I hand off the presentation to Eike. And the last part of the webinar will deal with answering your questions. We encourage you to ask questions during the webinar, and we will try to answer all of them after the presentation has ended. You can find the chat room in your bottom right corner, the icon with the question mark. For the questions that remain unanswered at the end of the webinar, we will do a follow-up email, so be sure that we will answer all of them. This webinar session will be recorded and we will send you a link in the coming days so you can share it with your colleagues or watch it later. We have a few upcoming webinars. We already gathered some feedback and we understand this hour is quite inconvenient for some parts of the world. That's why we decided that for the next webinars, we will do 2 sessions as to cover all of the time slots. The first upcoming webinar is on the 29th of May. It's called Generating and Depositing Nanoparticles at the Push of a Button with VSP-G1 and VSP-Accessories, followed by the one on the 12th of June, introducing the VSP-P1 nanostructured material printer, the ultimate tool for material development. And then we have 2 more that have to be determined: size-dependent particle properties, screening made simple with the VSP S1 size selector, and novel-supported catalyst development, the VSP PC powder coater, which is the latest addition to our product portfolio. Provide additional information, and if you would like to receive a mailing of this or register for upcoming webinars, please respond to our email after the webinar session. We would like to have feedback from you because this information will help us understand better how we can support your research. So if you have questions or even webinar suggestions, please contact our communications department via our contact person, which is myself, Andrei Linka, a.ilinka@vsparticle.com, or by phone number at international prefix 310633891908. If you want to know more about VSParticle solutions and how they can help you in speeding up your research, please contact our sales department via our contact person, Martin Kamp, m.kamp@vsparticle.com, or by telephone at international prefix 0883080413. Don't worry if you didn't have time to note this down. We will do a final slide with the contacts there so you can remind it and use it. Now I'm going to do a little bit of introduction of VSParticle for people who are not familiarized with us yet. Born out of the research labs of TU Delft with over 20 years of experience in the synthesis of aerosols, we believe that there is a whole new world of possibilities at the nanoscale. As we all start to understand these possibilities, it will enable research and industry to rethink production processes and develop new materials to create innovative applications. By introducing a fully automated and reproducible production process of new nanostructured materials, we can provide researchers with the right tools to explore unique material properties and easily integrate them into much needed applications. Since 2014, the company helped scientists and industry leaders to drastically reduce the development time of new materials and products. New materials that are needed in solving some of the biggest challenges of our century. Empowering researchers in fields such as catalysis, healthcare, and semiconductors is essential if we are to solve some of these challenges. The company currently employs over 20 passionate young people, and it's headquartered in Delft. It has an international distribution network in the USA, Europe, and Asia. And here you have a map with the installed base of VSParticle R&D systems. Unlocking the full potential of new materials and empowering material pioneers is at the core of VSParticle. Thank you all for bearing with me for this short introduction. I will now hand off the presentation and also the screen to Eike van de Voogd, and I will see you at the end of the session when we will answer your questions. So I would encourage you to ask questions at any point during the webinar. Don't forget you are on mute in this live session, so you won't be able to speak. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later. Eike?
Thanks, Andrea, for this wonderful introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome, and thanks again for joining this webinar. So to me, today I have the honor to show you what VSP is doing and to see or explain you in more detail how we are doing our best to help you as a material researcher to speed up your developments. Please, again, feel free to post any questions in the Q&A. We love questions, and we are always eager to answer them. So, the use of nanoparticles in material research or in material development has been growing almost exponentially in the past years. And people are saying that nanoparticles are really the next big thing in advanced materials. The reason that there's so much interest in using nanoparticles as almost universal building blocks in the development of new materials comes due to the fact that if you break up bulk materials into very small particles, or nanoparticles if we call them, we are able to change the material properties due to the fact that at that small scale, quantum mechanics is more dominant. On the right, you can see a gold nanoparticle. This image was taken under a high resolution TEM microscope. In this case, you can already see the gold atoms separated. And to show you that the properties are changing due to quantum mechanics, I put in a graph of the melting temperature of gold, depending on the particle radius. And what you see is if you go from a higher radius to smaller, that the melting temperature is not changing a little. If you go to the very small, let's say few or sub 5 nanometer particles, you see an almost exponential decrease. And this enormous change in physical properties, that is, I think, what is so interesting in using nanoparticles, because it's not only the melting temperature that you can change, it's a whole variety of physical properties that you can change. And you can use to optimize your new material to the specific needs of your application, whether it's a fuel cell or a solar cell or a new sensor. So what we have seen in literature is that using nanoparticles to develop new application has already been proven to quite a large extent. I think in different enormous industries, researchers have shown that they were able to develop new and improved materials that were enabling new or improved applications. I will not go through them in detail, but there are numerous. But one of the reasons that we founded VSP is because of this problem, that the development time of a new material takes roughly 20 years, from the lab all the way to industrial production. And a time here of 20 years is an enormous break on unleashing the potential of new materials. Because this time frame is way too long for government and policy agencies, but also for investors. So only the big corporates, the Intels, the BASFs are able to really invest long-term in material R&D and unlock the power of new advanced materials, which I think is pity. Because if everybody could do it way quicker and in a very much reduced time frame, we could solve much more global problems that we are facing today. The underlying problems that are in the end resulting to this 20-year time frame are twofold. First, we see that for material researchers, it's really a trial and error process. You don't know which nanoparticle will be beneficial for your application or your desired material. So what you do is you test one and then you iterate again and again. And the second problem is that if you find the ideal nanoparticle or the ideal nanomaterial, that it still is quite complex for industry to take your material and start mass manufacturing it on a large scale. Today, I will only focus on our current solution to the first problem. How can we speed up material research and how can we help you by taking out the complexity of your research? VSP is also founded to create solutions for the second problem. We are collaborating already today with industrial partners to enable mass manufacturing of nanomaterial-based applications on industrial scale. If you are interested in the second problem or our solution to the second problem, then please contact us. But for now, I will focus on our solution for the first problem. As mentioned, nanoparticle research is a trial and error-based approach. So in this overview, you can see if you go from the left, you design your hypothesis and then you search for your material and then you do the quality control in incorporation into the final material that you are using. And then you can do all the analysis to figure out if this material or if this specific nanoparticle indeed added the ideal properties to your product. In the ideal world, you will go from left to right in a single run, and then you have a great success and you published in Nature or Science. But what we see in nanoparticle research is that a lot of researchers are stuck in any of these cycles. So either they can't find the right recipe to make the ideal nanoparticle, or the recipe doesn't work, or is not reproducible, or the supplier is shipping nanoparticles stabilized in a liquid. But in the end, we're not of the ideal size. There are many loopholes which are adding time to this development cycle. And we see that most researchers can only investigate a couple of new materials into their 4-year PhD. At VSP, we do everything we can to provide you with a complete solution. We want to take out the hard part of this cycle. We want you to focus on your field of expertise, that is improving materials for batteries or improving materials for solar cells, but don't become this synthesis expert and develop all these specialties that you need to, in the end, synthesize these very small nanoparticles. We want to provide you a fully automated production process that saves you time, that is reproducible and scalable and flexible. We call this nanoparticles at the push of a button. And what we have seen so far is that we were able to reduce the development times from months almost to minutes. So I will show you a movie that takes you through the steps or the underlying explanation of how this automated sample preparation system works. I highly recommend you to also go to our YouTube channel where you can look at all the movies and watch them in your own time as often as you want. So our process is divided into 3 steps. First, you have nanoparticle generation, processing, and then deposition. During processing, we always start with a carrier gas, either nitrogen or argon, and 2 conductive electrodes. Could be 2 electrodes of gold. By using electrical sparks, we are ablating a small fraction of the conductive electrodes that forms nanoparticles in the gas phase. During transportation, you will see that the nanoparticles, or almost the atomic clusters, are growing into bigger and bigger particles. In the last step, we are using different methods to immobilize the nanoparticles on the substrate. In this case, it's Brownian motion, so diffusion, to get the nanoparticles dispersed on the surface, filtration, to put them onto a porous filter membrane, or we can use impaction, accelerating the gas flow so that the particles are bombarded onto the substrate. And there are a variety of things we can change. We can change the carry gas or the electrodes, all having an influence on the final particles that we are making. We can process alloys or composite materials. All the green elements highlighted in this overview can be processed in the same system. By changing the residence time, so the time between generating a spark and immobilizing the nanoparticles, you can change the size of the nanoparticles relatively easily. Combining different systems gives you another layer of flexibility to combine different nanoparticles from different sources, or even coat nanoparticles from one source with another. So there's a huge amount of flexibility in doing gas phase synthesis of your nanoparticles and direct immobilization on the UC port. So in the essence, why we are able to automate your nanoparticle synthesis and provide you a fully integrated solution is that we are using a gas phase synthesis. And in our case, it's almost a continuous gas phase synthesis. So again, we start with evaporating some of the material by creating a plasma, which goes up to 20,000 degrees Celsius. And out of this evaporated plasma, you get the formation, or you get, let's say, loose atoms. And directly after the plasma has vanished, you will see the coagulation or the agglomeration of those atoms to form atomic clusters. And then if you give them more time, bigger nanoparticles, and then in the end, also agglomerates. So the nice thing about this process is that you can just select the type of material that you want to make into nanoparticles and put it as a solid electrode, the tip in this image, into the system. So switching between synthesizing gold nanoparticles or platinum nanoparticles is just a matter of minutes that you need to replace the electrodes. As mentioned, all the elements in green can be processed in the system due to the high temperature that we are creating in the plasma. So the system or the process is really material agnostic. It's not depending on the material. It's almost as easy to produce gold nanoparticles than it is to produce titanium nanoparticles. Again, you see an image of the gold electrodes that we are able to supply you. In general, we are supplying electrodes to our customers. Also, if you have a request or looking for complex alloys or composites, we have an extended network of suppliers that can help us supplying you the ideal electrode. Again, I would recommend you to go to our YouTube channel, where you can see also some instruction videos of how to assemble the reactor chamber with the electrodes in it, to get a better understanding of how this works and how it looks like. As already mentioned in the movie, one of the key advantages of the system is that it's not only able to process a broad variety of materials, but you also have different possibilities to mix different materials on the nanoscale. So if you start from the left, using 2 electrodes of the same material, you make pure nanoparticles of that specific material. But if you replace one of the electrodes, so you take a gold and a silver electrode, for example, then you are already mixing gold and silver in the nanoparticles. You can process alloyed or sintered electrodes. In that case, you know that all the particles that you produce have exactly the same composition as your starting alloy. You can use different system configurations to create more complex nanoparticle compositions. Another thing I want to mention before I will dive deep into the different products that we are offering is that we are continuously doing our best to extend our web-based interface. So instead of pushing the buttons on the physical products, we want to give you a fully digital experience that is making your use of the system even more simplistic. So this system is already quite far in development, and we are now rolling out the beta program. And the unique features is that it enables you to do remote control of your system. So you don't have to be in the lab continuously. You can check it when you are working on your paper at the office. It gives you the possibility to do autonomous operations. So even if you want to go into the night to do some synthesis, it enhances our intuitive and ease of use. and it provides the possibility to do data logging and storage. So now back to the products. So I already showed you two of our capabilities, the electrodes and the web-based interface, but now I will explain you the different products that we are offering. During the last 5 years, VSP exists for 5 years now, we have invested intensely in our R&D capabilities to develop this broad spectrum of solutions. And the reason for that is that people are looking for nanoparticles on different substrates. Some researchers are using powders, some researchers are using silicon wafers, so 2D disks. And we want to give you the option to basically take any substrate that you want, and we provide you a fully integrated solution to deposit your desired nanoparticles on that specific substrate. And that's also why we have this broad product portfolio. It always starts with the VSP G1, our nanoparticle generator. That's the first step also that you see in our technology animation. It's the part where we convert the bulk materials into the very small nanoparticles or nanoaerosols, since they are in the gas phase. So the VSP G1 can be used for some customers as standalone in different applications. People are using it for nanotoxicity, then they are combining this system with different exposure systems where they are investigating the toxicity of the nanoparticles. It can also be used as standalone in calibration or emission testing. So people use it to test the infrastructure that, for example, car manufacturers are using to analyze the output of a new engine in particle composition. One of our first customers that bought the G1 as standalone was Professor Flemming Cassé. He's from the Dutch Institute for Public Health. And what he's doing is indeed combining the G1 with other installations, other aerosol processing installations, to in the end expose different living tissues to nanoparticles to see whether or not they are impacted by the exposure of nanoparticles. One last remark I want to make on this part is we were very happy as VSP that Flemming Cassé was one of our customers, because we also think that this area is quite important. We want to give the best advice to our customers to how to handle safely those new nanomaterials. And together with these partners, we are able to get new knowledge on this field and provide you the best and state-of-the-art suggestions or improvements. Not every customer is able to use the G1 as standalone or is able to handle aerosols, nanoparticles in the gas. So that's why we introduced already in 2019 the different deposition modes that we are providing. They are used to get the nanoparticles on a substrate. We have 5 of them. I won't go into detail now because they will be mentioned also during the different products. But you have diffusion, filtration, impaction. If you do impaction on an advanced printing stage, you can go into printing mode. And the last one is also coating of powders. I will first focus on the first 3 because they are also embedded into the 3 accessories that we are providing. So the VSP accessories are really small modules that most customers start with to get acquainted with the technology. And enables them already to immobilize the nanoparticles on relatively small substrates, which are ideal for material research. So the accessories are component which is connected to the G1. And again, they are used to coat the surface of different substrates. Markets where most of our products are used are catalysis, especially nanoparticle catalyst, but also in the field of electrocatalysis, which is of enormous importance in the coming years. Sensors, healthcare, and energy. If you want to have more questions or application notes of those different areas, please contact us. So we have 3 different accessories. Number 1, using diffusion, number 2 using filtration, and number 3 using impaction. And I will go through them one by one. So here you can see how the accessory is connected to the G1. And what we do, we use the aerosol gas stream to go perpendicular to a substrate. And just by the diffusional force of the nanoparticles, because they are at atmospheric conditions, atmospheric pressures and temperatures, you will see that the nanoparticles are depositing on your substrate. And that's nice because then you have a low loading of your nanoparticles on your substrate. So you have the nanoparticles separated from each other. Another overview. Into the accessory, you have the sample holder. I will show you a little bit more about the sample holder in the next slide. And you have the gas outlet where the gas with the non-used nanoparticles is coming out. So again, we are using Brownian motion. You've also seen it in the movie. And by changing the time of deposition, you can change the surface coverage between 1 and 10%. We are working on more predictive models that can give you a better estimation upfront already on how long you should do the deposition. So the application areas where this accessory is used for, in situ TEM, for example, new electrocatalyst or conductive surfaces, if you want to do electrocatalysis research, photocatalysis, in situ spectroscopy beyond in situ TEM, so in situ AFM or STM or other spectroscopy fields. But in the broader essence, it's all within the field of material research. On the top corner, right corner, you can see the substrate holder that we are providing. It's a surface area of 10 by 10 millimeters. So it's ideal for temp grid, small silicon wafers, or other substrates of this size. What I want to mention is that this is the size that we selected up front. If people are interested in a tailor-made size, slightly bigger or smaller even, then that's always possible, but please contact us for more information. One of our customers of the TU in Wien, in Germany, used the accessory to deposit gold nanoparticles directly on a TEM grid and then applied it to do high resolution TEM research. In this image, you can also see the very nice lattice structure of the gold nanoparticles. And you can see that they even go down to 2 nanometer in size. And you can see that since you can see the metal lattice so well, it shows that the particles are indeed quite pure, and that's due to the fact that they are made in gas phase synthesis. Another example is from our customer Brett Vekhuizen from the University of Utrecht. Also, he is doing a lot of great work on model catalysis development. What I want to highlight is that this sample was prepared in 6 minutes, and it was deposited on a temp grid. In this case, it was not gold, it was a nickel electrodes that we used. And again, you can see by the elemental composition that there was no carbon involved. So we made the nickel from the gas phase. You can see that there was no carbon residual on the surface, which is important if you want to do more in-depth studies of the nickel catalyst. The publication on this research is still in preparation, and we are expecting some nice results. This research was also done in collaboration with Oak Ridge National Laboratories. One of the publications that already came out of this group was on a niche application in shell-isolated nanoparticle enhanced Raman spectroscopy, or SHINERS, which is a very advanced spectroscopy method. So what we showed is that if we deposit nickel on gold nanoparticles with a silicon oxide core or shell around it, that for the first time we were able to detect a spectra in relation to the nickel nanoparticles, which was not possible to do with other methods. So this was the diffusion accessory. Now we go to the filtration accessory. Again, a small module connected to the G1. The principle is relatively straightforward. As we optimized this filtration unit so that the nanoparticles are deposited nicely across the filter that you put into the system. Type of substrates that you can use: filter paper, carbon cloth, metallic meshes. As long as there's a good flow of the carrier gas through it, you can use it. The diameter of the filter can go up to 47 millimeters. And the type of research fields is comparable to the other accessories. So we see a lot of interest in the catalysis area. And especially in this case, if you use conductive carbon support, you can do a lot of nice tricks with electrocatalysis. This is an example where they combined our technology with electrospinning to create first the nanopores or the nanofibers. And then afterwards, they deposited a combination of aluminum and gold. So they used two different electrodes. And what you see in the images on the right, the first one is just the fibers as prepared. The second image is the nanoparticles coated on the outside of the fibers. The nanoparticles are coming directly from the gas stream. And then if you go to image 3 and 4, you have a TEM image of the as deposited nanoparticles on the outside. And what you can see is that first we made the aluminum oxide matrix, which gives a secondary porosity to the support. And then we immobilized gold on this matrix as a catalyst. This method of immobilizing even two different materials, so the first one as a secondary support, which can be aluminum oxide, titanium oxide, or any other element that you want as a support. And then this also done with the G1. And then afterwards, you can deposit the active catalyst with the same system. A comparable sample was made by George Viscos, a researcher both in TU Delft but also in the Cyprus Institute. And he was synthesizing, or he was using two G1s to immobilize both nickel nanoparticles and carbon nanoparticles. And what he found out when he was doing research for dry reforming of methane is that if you deposit the mixture of carbon and nickel, you have a better or improved nickel dispersion on your support, which is interesting because you are able to mix different elements in the gas phase already before depositing them on the surface. Then we go to the last one, the impaction module. What we are doing in this system is accelerating the gas flow with the nanoaerosol to such a high velocity is that the nanoparticles are not able to follow the gas stream anymore, which are reflecting on the surface. So they are bombarded directly onto the surface. And this enables us to basically stack the nanoparticles more effectively on top of each other, creating very interesting nanoporous layers. Same concept. It's a module that you can directly connect to the G1. Substrate, it's using the same substrate holder, so that's relatively similar to the other one. The spot size can go up to 3 mm. Operating conditions, it's at room temperature, and it's at slightly reduced pressures, 0.1 millibar. This component can be used as standalone, as an accessory, or it can also be used in combination with another product that I will mention later on, the S1. Here you can see some results of one of our customers, Joost Ginkel. He's a PhD at the University of Delft. And what he did together with some colleagues is depositing, or first developing a process to coat copper nanoparticles, and then depositing them with the impaction accessory on a silicon wafer. The images that you can see on the right were prepared also in roughly 30 minutes time frame. And the idea was to develop a coating to prevent oxidation of the copper so that the copper nanoparticles can be used for the production of interconnects, conductive interconnects. After the successful introduction of the accessories, we received more and more requests on getting a better control on particle size. And that's also why we started the development of the VSP-S1, where S stands for size selection. The VSP-S1 is a more advanced module than the accessories. And it's comparable to a mass spec. So what it does, it uses physical phenomena to size select one specific nanoparticle of one specific size out of the, let's say, distribution that is coming from the G1. and it goes up to 0.1 nanometer precision. So you can make samples of 4.3 nanometer and then also samples of 4.4, and then do comparison between the physical properties that you measure of those different nanoparticles. So we don't think it's a product that is useful for every researcher, but if you really want to do fundamental, I would say, nanoparticle research, really understand the basics, I think it's the most powerful tool that you can get. So it's using a DMA, which stands for differential mobility analyzer. You can look it up. It's a technology that is developed in the aerosol community. And again, it's using the VSP-A3 accessory to immobilize the nanoparticles or the size-selected nanoparticles onto the support. A nice sample that has been made, again, 15 minutes deposition time. Electrodes that were used were platinum, and they were deposited on the TEM grid. So you can see size-selected platinum nanoparticles on a TEM grid. Again, by playing with your deposition time, you can play with the coverage, making sure that you have a high enough coverage so you can find the nanoparticles easily. A nice quote from our first customer, Matteo Monai, it's also from the group of Bert Weckhuizen. He said the best way to upset a chemist is by saying that a physicist can do it better. We are not saying that either of the two are better, but at least he needed to agree that after 10 years of working with complex chemistry, that he was defeated by the system, which has more precision and is quicker in the synthesis than he has became after 10 years of learning all the practices to do the synthesis. And this was it was a nice milestone for us. Still, we are working in close collaboration with this group to further improve the current product to get all specs out of the system. So I hope you are still with me. So I will now go to the last two systems that we are offering, the printer and the powder coater system. So the VSP-P1, which is our, I would say, core product, which we are already developing for quite some time. And basically it's the, I would almost say, ultimate nanoparticle printer. Again, it's a module that you are connecting to the G1, but it gives you an enormous amount of flexibility to print different structures with nanoparticles. Again, since it's using the same impaction as in the A3 accessory, you are able to get these very fancy and nanoporous and nanostructured layers, which you are able to pattern locally. So in this printer, you have the printing nozzle and the substrate holder, which are both operated, again, via the web interface. The deposition, so the spot size can be changed from 100 micron to almost 1 centimeter in diameter. The current stage has a 10 micron position accuracy. We have both X, Y, and Z controlled, so you can adjust also the distance from the printhead. The chamber is currently fixing the substrate size to 20 by 20 centimeter, but in theory it could be enlarged relatively easily. Applications, there are numerous, but some applications that we are currently working on is printing these advanced materials in, for example, microfluidic devices. High throughput catalyst screening, I will give an example of that, but also advanced sensors. We are using the same technology to also manufacture surface enhanced Raman spectroscopy chips. We are doing this under a different brand, Enhancers. You can see the website. And the reason is that these nanoporous layers drastically enhance the Raman spectra, which is very beneficial if you want to do detection of molecules in liquid. So if you are interested in SERF chips, then please visit our website and contact us. This is another example. It's a nice present that we made for our Chinese distributor. It's a Chinese text. So we started off with solid gold rods. We used the G1 to convert the rods into the gold nanoparticles, and then we used the printer to selectively print these structures on the system. And if you would zoom into these structures, you can see that it's a very nice nanoporous layer, which is partly sintered. since they had some heat treatment. Another example is since we are able to process 6-inch wafers we can program the stage to print multiple dots. In this case, we printed 100 dots in a relatively short time, which is ideal also for the deposition of sensing materials in metal oxide gas. The last application that I want to mention before I come almost to the end or to the last product is a collaboration we did with Klaas-Jan Schouten from Avantium, where we used 2 G1s and 1 printer, and we combined the output of nickel electrodes and iron electrodes, and then we printed an 8x8 matrix of different compositions regarding nickel and iron, and then Avantium was able to analyze all those compositions in an automated process on their useness of or their use in oxygen evolution reactions. So what we proved is that within an hour almost, we were able to synthesize 64 new compositions, fully automated by using this printing platform, which I think is very interesting and also needed to accelerate the development of new electrocatalysts. So now I come to the last product, which is the powder coater. It's the least mature of our portfolio. It's currently in the last stages of development, and we are expecting it to launch it later this year. So again, this was really a market pull. So a lot of customers were asking, okay, can you deposit also the nanoparticles on a powder? Initially, we were a little bit hesitating because handling powders is not an easy job. But since last year, we started to tackle this problem, and we are making enormous progress on this part. So the concept of this product is relatively straightforward. You just put in your standard powder support. You put the electrodes in the G1 of the material that you want to make nanoparticles on your powder, and then you press the button, and then the system takes care of the rest. And then after 30 minutes, you will have your ideal nanoparticle immobilized on your powder, and you can do your analysis directly afterwards. Some highlights of the product. Again, so the system is designed to automatically immobilize the catalytic nanoparticles on your powder, and it should be able to process a variety of different standard powders. 2 examples that I can already show you. These were already developed a while ago. So on the top one, you can see 5 nanometer gold particles on titanium oxide support. And in the bottom one, you can see gold nanoparticles on a carbon support. Just to give you an example or a proof that this process is really working, but more validation will be coming up. Also in the upcoming webinar on the powder coater. So if you have more questions on this product, don't hesitate to ask us or contact us for more background information. And with explaining the details of this last product, I am at the end of the presentation, in which I hopefully successfully showed you our new automated technology that from our perception is really helping you to speed up your material development and research. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I will hand over the webinar back to my dear colleague, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Eike. Very nice presentation. We have a lot of questions from what I can see. Thank you, guys. I will read them in a chronological order because I think that's fair. Eike, are you ready to answer the questions?
Yes.
Yes. First question comes from GT. The deposition method shown in this presentation works fine for 2D systems, films, filters, etc. Is there any way to transfer the nanoparticles in a porous support?
I hope in the last product I showed you the capabilities that we are currently developing to deposit the nanoparticles on powders. Again, it's a non-nanoporous powder. So if you are using MOFs or zeolites, then there's no way to get the nanoparticles directly into your zeolite structure. But if you have standard non-porous powders, then that's useful, or that it can be used.
Thank you. Next question comes from Abride. I hope I pronounced it correctly. If I didn't, I'm sorry. What are the current techniques to produce nanoparticles?
Oh, I think if you look into the research, there are a variety of different techniques that you can use. The most common technique, I think, is colloidal synthesis, because it's the most convenient one. So you just order some glassware and some chemicals, and if you have a synthesis lab, you can start trying to synthesize the nanoparticles. Even though the barrier to use the technology is relatively low, it's highly complicated. So optimizing your chemical recipe takes weeks or sometimes even months, and the reproducibility in those methods is relatively low. Another example is the high-end high vacuum or ultra vacuum sputtering systems, for example, from Mantis. Those systems are, because they are operating in high vacuum, relatively complex, and their production capacity is relatively low. So I think our solution, at least that's why we are so keen of it, is really combining the enormous flexibility in materials, but also the ease of use, and the fact that it's a desktop system, so it can be placed in almost any lab.
Okay. The next question comes from M. Klingenhof. He says, hi, thank you for the nice webinar. Thank you for attending. In case of abundant transition metals, is it possible to prepare something else than spherical oxides or metals? Same question for expensive metals such as platinum. Is it possible to prepare, oh, this is a hard one for me.
Octahedrals.
Octahedrals, that's correct.
So since the process, I think it's a good question. Since the process is optimized for, I would say, the really small nanoparticles, we have even proven that we can go down to atomic clusters. Most of the nanoparticles that we synthesize are spherical, due to the fact that particles of that size are spherical by almost definition. We have seen some very nice results at some of our customers. I think it's still unpublished, that if you synthesize or sinter, let's say, agglomerates, which is a collection of different primary particles together, in a later stage, that you can see all kinds of structures appearing. But that's really a new field that I think is unexplored at the moment. So most of the particles are spherical. If you want to, you can make metals, you can make oxides, you can even do some nitrogen doping. In some cases, you can do carbon. But on other structures than spherical nanoparticles, I think it's a field to explore at the moment.
Ravi from Specialized Instruments India says, how easy is it to change the electrodes? Can one easily change electrons at site?
Definitely. I think it takes, including the cleaning, I would say half an hour or something to change the electrodes. It's 2 screws, 2 clamps. It's really easy.
Okay.
If not, if you have problem with replacing the electrodes, I will come to you and will help you with it. I will promise.
Okay. And a question from an anonymous person who is being mysterious. VSP is able to produce nanoparticle. How is the size of the nanoparticles controlled in this instrument? I think you discussed this in the size selector.
Yeah, so there's 2 options. One is by playing with the residence time, as we call it. It's the time between forming the electrical spark and immobilizing the made nanoparticles on your support. If you reduce that time, the nanoparticles are smaller. If you extend that time, the nanoparticles are bigger. It's quite simplistic how I explained it, but in general, it's the case. If you add the capabilities of the S1, the size selector, then you are able to really size select nanoparticles of one specific size out of this slightly broader distribution, giving you extended capabilities of doing size effect studies.
Uttam also asks if the powder sample can be used.
I guess if you are interested in more information regarding the current status of the development of this product, then definitely contact Maarten Kamp. We can give you a more in-depth or overview of the possibilities. I think, if I'm correctly, in the coming months, we will start shipping demo samples to a variety of customers. So definitely get in contact so that we can get your interest in the type of powders that you want to process, and then we can take care of that.
Yeah. And another quite long question from an anonymous person. There is a category of materials known as high entropy alloys, which are a combination of 5 or more than 5 metallic elements in equiatomic ratio. I'm very proud of myself. Can this instrument be used to make nanoparticles of such materials? Are the electrodes available for such complex alloys?
So my simple answer would be yes. As long as the electrode is solid and conductive, and it can be shaped into the shapes that I showed you, it can be processed. So even if you have a combination or a mixture of 10 or 20 different elements, as long as it's conductive, it can be processed. Conductivity should be above what you have with silicon as a threshold. Whether or not we can easily source this special combination is a second question. I think we can definitely try. And there are different methods to in the end, mix elements into a composite electrode. So it's definitely something to investigate.
Yeah, very interesting question. Another question for M. Klingenhoff. He asks, is it possible to use the device for the preparation of substances with surface area of 5 square meters?
It depends a bit on what type of substrate you are thinking of. As mentioned, the printing, the VSP P1 has a printing area of 20 by 20 centimeters. So then I think a surface area of 5 square centimeters would be sufficient. If it's just a membrane, for example, then I think the current accessory number 2, the filtration accessory, will not be sufficient. But again, with the accessories, it's relatively straightforward to increase the surface area. So then we could think of a tailor-made system.
Yeah. Someone asks if we could elaborate on sensors, especially how you contribute to sensor design.
So at the moment we are primarily focusing on mass manufacturing of metal oxide gas sensors, and especially those that are MEMS-based. It's not that we are doing anything on MEMS design or in that respect. It's primarily that we can print these nanoporous, these highly porous layers locally on the heating chip or the heating membrane of a MEMS-based gas sensor. So it's a combination of locally printing of pure nanoparticles, which have a higher sensitivity since there is no contamination on them. And the other one is the fact that we can mix a variety of different materials together, which gives you the possibility to improve selectivity and these things. If you want more information on that respect, again, please contact and we can elaborate in more detail on that topic.
Yes. Thank you. I think we're approaching the end of this webinar. There are a few questions more, and I encourage people to ask even more questions if they have them. We will leave the event go on live for 10 more minutes so we can gather all of the questions and do a follow-up with the answers. Thank you so much. We didn't expect it to be so interactive, so maybe for the next time we will give the possibility for people to speak. And thank you for being here, and I'll see you in our next digital endeavors. From my side, have a nice weekend, and I hope to see you soon. Eike?
Yeah, thanks. We are really glad with all the questions, so please keep on posting them, and we will do our efforts to answer them. And I hope to see you also in the other webinars coming up, where we will have a more in-depth dive into the different products. Thanks, and have a good day.